All right, it is 6 o'clock, Monday, November 21st, 2022, and I'm calling this meeting of the Lewisville City Council workshop session to order. I'm going to change the order of items here a little bit tonight. I'm going to move item D up to being the third item. First off, let's go ahead and take care of the regular agenda items and consent agenda items. We have a certificate of achievement from Planning Excellence. That's exciting. We've been asked to remove item E2 as their City Manager, did you want to speak to that?
Sure, Mayor and Council, we're asking you to pull this off consent and table it to the December 5th meeting, primarily because we're going to try to make one more run at TxDOT on the fighting farmer words on the aesthetics.
Item 1, minutes. Developer agreement, item 3. Professional services agreement, item 4.
I have a question about this item. Sure. So this is to talk about the possible expansion of the Grand Theater?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a study, right? Are they looking at just the expansion of the theater itself or some other possible uses for that property?
They're also looking, James, do you want to answer that question?
So it's not so much property driven as it is based on whether the capacity of Lewisville Grand Theater is ready and the market is ready to expand in some way. That property, of course, is available, and that's in the parameters of the scope of the study. But we also included in there the possibility of doing it somewhere else and the possibility of doing some sort of joint use facility at that location as well.
When you say a joint use facility, what does that mean?
Public-private, maybe commercial along Main, and then you build behind and above for the arts focus. And with the topography there, you might have to go down some anyway, so maybe, I'm not the architect, but the possibility of a joint arts and commercial strip facility is in the scope.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Item 5. Item 6. Item 7. Item 8.
Items from started and done.
That's very aggressive.
Yes.
Item 9.
Is item 9 just an update, or is this a new policy?
It's required to be updated every year, so there's no changes.
Item 10.
Does item 10, so this is separate than Genco?
These are the
This is separate?
This is separate.
Okay, all right. Just making sure.
Conversation.
She was ready to pounce.
We won't talk about that.
I was gonna run out of the room.
Item
No, this is
11.
with this lovely lady.
Item 11. Item 12.
Are we nominating tonight? Or we just,
The
Are we
intent
nominating
is, the intent is
tonight?
to nominate and have a final slate.
okay.
The last one that the email that you sent today, is
Yes, ma'am.
she a resident of Lewisville?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
She lives over over near East Hill Park.
Okay, great.
So we have a list of 11 and 12-ish, and we need to narrow it down to 9. Okay.
So I have one name I wanted to add to that list. James McClinton. He's a former mayor of Topeka, Kansas. He's lived here for a few years, so he has some municipal experience. He worked for Tarrant County, so just somebody to add. He's lived here for, I think, 2 years less than I have. So just to add, throw that name in the mix. I think he'd make a good person with that experience, having done some of this stuff before.
What was his name again?
James McClinton. And I guess hash that out outside.
we're going to be tabling the appointment, obviously, right? Because we have nobody still.
Yeah, you're gonna have to declare a
Right.
vacancy.
Staff's working on it.
Yeah, so we don't have an appointment to consider tonight. We do have closed session?
We do not.
We do not. Okay, so that is the agenda. We'll go ahead and move to item B, discussion of 2023 legislative agenda and critical legislative issues. We have our Director of Community Relations and Tourism, Mr. James Cunkey, to present.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Also have Randy Bird with us. She is our lobbyist for this coming session, and actually worked with her a couple of sessions now, once mostly at BCTA, and then she assisted throughout the previous session. So I want to go briefly through a kind of a preview of the 2023 Texas legislative session and our involvement in it. Not a lot different in terms of our processes, but of course the issues kind of change regularly. And at the end, we need to get input from you about what you as a body believe are the critical issues that we need to focus the majority of our attention on during the session. Let's just list your team of who's working on this. Of course, Brandy, I mentioned, you are a very important part of it, not only in developing the agenda, but in implementing it afterward. A call from one of you is more likely to answer than a call from me. So we will be calling upon you occasionally to assist with that. City Management Department directors, and I'm the bottom one there. If you make the slides, you get to be in the slides, but then you don't know how to move the slides. I can't move the slides. My hand is broken. Don't know what happened.
I'll help you.
I can turn it off and turn it back on. Okay, so this is what we do. We first, every 2 years, we adopt a legislative agenda. And we do this in the November-December timeframe prior to the state legislative session, although it really applies also through congressional sessions. And that's the process we're finishing up now, and at your second meeting in December when we bring out the final document for you. And this establishes the City of Lewisville's official positions on a wide range of topics. Not just the ones that we are actively working on, not just the ones that you've identified as critical, but also others that crop up from time to time, or have been issues in the past, or we've heard might become an issue, or as bills are filed. We'd like to have the ability to nimbly respond to those bills, not to keep coming back to you every 2 weeks with a new topic of the day. We'll work with our local reps on local bills if needed. We do have one that we're hoping to pursue this year. An example of this was a couple sessions ago, 3 sessions ago now, I guess, when we got a bill passed that allowed us to hold an election in Castle Hills to expand the boundaries of the fire prevention district. State law didn't allow that. Now it does. And the voters approved that, by the way. Then during the session, we will submit letters or do online or in-person testimony or phone calls, reaching out to our legislators, but also legislators on committees or bill authors, to just share our thoughts, our suggestions, in some cases our concerns about various bills. The committee testimony, well, now it works. The committee testimony, we often drive down there and can participate. The House now accepts online testimony, the Senate still does not. That's a holdover from the pandemic year, but mostly we do it in person. So this is the calendar. I'm not going to touch the screen again. This is the calendar. We are a week past pre-filing. So bills have already been filed, even though some legislators who are newly elected have not yet taken office, and even though the legislature itself does not kick off until January 10th. They meet for 140 days. Glad it's not 340 days. Last day for filing, March 10th, so they got 2 months to get bills filed. And there's usually a lull in between here, and then the last 7 days or so before March 10th, all of a sudden a whole lot of things get thrown. Oh my gosh, this deadline, and they throw those in. The closer you are to March 10th, the less likely your bill is to move anywhere. It's just the way the calendar works, because the session ends on May 29th. And so if you file early, yay. You file late, you might have a disappointing session. And the governor has till the 18th of June to sign it, or veto it, or of course just let it become law without his attention at all. Special session, we don't know. There have been a lot of special sessions in recent years. And predicting one yes or no is very dicey, but from what we've seen historically, there's a good chance of it. Okay. Can you switch the slide? There we go. Here's things we do know. There's a Republican majority in both chambers, and slightly more Republican than it was 2 years ago. 86-64 in the House, 1912 in the Senate. I think there's a recount still hanging out there. That's a seat that was won by a Democrat, but it's still being recounted. So this could be 20 and 11, but 1912 is what it looks like right now. Largely the same leadership is expected. There will be a challenge for the speakership, but the speaker has a pretty strong position. I'd be surprised if someone replaced him, but I would not bet my penny. We still see a hostile atmosphere to cities. We saw that during the interim charges, which is that when the committees are given topics between sessions, go and study this and come back with recommendations. And you can often tell by how those charges are written what kind of recommendations they are hoping to get out of it. So it's like if you're talking about to go for dinner, say, what's for dinner? There's no bias. If you say, hey, we're having Chinese for dinner, right? There's a bias. Those interim charges often have what we would interpret as a hostility towards cities and some of those biases. And there were 800 bills filed by 1 o'clock on the first day of filing. There's more than 1,000 already filed, and the session is still 6 weeks away. More than that. But, so 800 bills already out there. There will be probably about 7,000 bills over the course of the session, both House and Senate. That includes the congratulations to Uncle Joe for his success, but there's a lot of other ones that we'll be watching. So we don't know how many others are going to affect Lewisville. Ultimately, usually about 1,000 of the bills are city related, and of those 1,000, maybe 100 would directly impact Lewisville if they passed. And so those are really the ones we watch the most, and in particular the critical issues we'll talk about. We don't know what key issues the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker will have. You'll notice that when the bills were filed, the first bill was in the House was HB 31, because the first 30 are held for the bills that the speaker wants to front load to the session. Those are the ones that usually get the most attention. All the big bills, the big budget bills and finance bills, and you notice that was a small number, and that's why. So we don't know what their key issues are. They haven't announced it yet. You can look at kind of their campaigning and past to get some ideas. So we just need to be quick. We've got to be able to move quickly as things develop. In fact, he's not here, but Judge Holman sent me information today about a bill that was filed that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere, but if it did, it'd be a bad thing, so we've got to be ready to watch. Here's our allies throughout this, some of the same ones. Texas Municipal League, they're still strong down there. There's some resistance to them. They used to be a lot stronger. North Texas Commission, the Police Chiefs Association has been very active the past several sessions, especially on issues such as police hiring and police discipline. And the Texas APA has decided to get much more active this year. In fact, Karen Walls is heading up that initiative for Texas APA. So we expect to see more from them. I don't have up here the Texas Recreation and Parks, TRAPS. I always want to say Parks and Recreation. It's the TV show, it's my fault. They also are active, and we work with them quite a bit also. And these are probably the most important ones. First off, our residents and businesses, because where there might be a bit of hostility towards city government, there's no hostility really towards the business community. And you can't be hostile to too many residents if you want to stay in office. So residents and businesses, we often will recruit them to let them know what's going on. Denton County, glad Commissioner Mitchell's in the room. We work with Denton County, and we talk to them quite a bit about issues that are coming up, and if they have a broad impact, the county's been a great partner with us. Other cities, especially on the sales tax issue. There are cities we've been working with a lot on the sales tax issue. And then our local legislators. Now keep in mind, we have almost an entirely new batch of legislators. Senator Springer is still in office. Representative Parker is now going to be Senator Parker. So he's not new, he's in a new position, and so he's at the, starting his way back up to the Senate. And our House reps are new. So they will be allies for us. We also need to let them get their feet settled as they get down to Austin. Here's some pre-filed bills to give you an idea of what's bubbling up out here. These are both about lobbying. Senator Middleton really hates cities lobbying. He's filed this for several sessions in a row. We knew he would file it again. And this would just say, no, cities cannot have a lobbyist, and you cannot pay dues to an organization that pays a lobbyist, which would be TML, would be Texas APA, would be the TRAPS. So all of our state organizations, we would have trouble paying. Now TML, I think, actually has found a way to work that out, but we might not be able to stay a member of those groups if this bill were passed. Now, Representative Spiller's is different. What it says is, yes, you can hire lobbyists with certain restrictions, certain standards, a lot more. There's already some transparency in there. He's adding to that somewhat. But also said that, and your lobbyists can't come talk to us about property tax issues. So, which we don't care about property tax, do we? Some others here, Senator Colcourse has filed one that would lower the appraisal cap to 5% from 10%, and also has filed one that would set an appraisal cap of 20% for non-residential properties. So commercial properties currently have no cap, that'd be a 20% cap. Representative Capriglione, I don't know his name or her name, would apply the homestead appraisal to all single-family properties, including if you own a property as an investment for rental, you'd have a homestead exemption because it's zoned residential. And then lastly, on this slide is Representative Schofield has one that says if you have a bond election, you have to specifically say on the ballot exactly what you're going to do and exactly what's going to cost. And if something dropped off or came in under, you couldn't move things around. So the way we do street bonds right now, where we just, hey, here's our streets and here's the projects we're looking at, would no longer be allowed if that were to pass. Representative Landgraf has one that would say that, this is about, yes, home farming, that you could not prohibit people in a residential property, regardless of size, from growing fruits and vegetables in their back, front, or side yards, or from raising rabbits and chickens in their side and backyards, with almost no restrictions. And then one here that would allow, and we like this one, this is actually in our support list, is would allow up to 20% of annual hot tax revenue to be used for certain public infrastructure and park projects that are near a hotel. So a road that provides access to a hotel, you could use up to 20% of your hotel tax money to build or improve that road. We can go very far, because road projects, as David can tell you, cost a lot of money, and we don't have that much, but still. These are what we know are some of our objectives going into the season. First off, there's a bill that I know you've talked about a little bit, and I believe Claire has talked to you about, and this is about massage parlors. Right now, once a massage parlor opens, there's not a whole lot of regulating we can do on that. And so if a massage parlor wants to be open at 2 in the morning, sounds a little bit sketchy, right? They're allowed to do that. Or if a massage parlor owner has a history of criminal violations or criminal investigations, we can't do much about that either, except those particular items. We think there needs to be a little bit of flexibility there. It's not just a human trafficking prostitution issue, although that's certainly part of it, but it is definitely a public safety and public welfare. So we have drafted language for this. We're still working through the details on it, and Brandy's going to help us try and find a local sponsor for that. Number one for us is always preserving the local rulemaking authority. We firmly believe, and the council has supported this since I've been here, and probably predates me, that local decisions are best made at the local level. That a decision that is perfect for Galveston might be horrible for Lewisville. And a decision that's perfect for Lewisville might be the worst thing in the world for Brownsville. So we think local government, you guys, you're elected by the residents, you need to be making those choices as much as possible. And so that'll be our number one priority, is trying to maintain that kind of authority. Not grow it, just keep it. And then finally, looking for relief from the destination sales tax change. The comptroller's change to destination sourcing for online sales has taken effect. And that will impact us. We have an agreement with Bed Bath & Beyond where there is some sharing. We still keep a big chunk of the sales tax. We share part of it with them because they sourced all of their sales in Texas here. We think that we made that agreement under the rules the state gave us. We did what they told us to do. We feel like they should give us some relief on that. And we'll be talking to people to see if we can make that happen. So let's talk about critical issues. There's hundreds of issues the legislature will talk about. There's 7,000 bills, 1,000 city bills, at least 100 affecting Lewisville. But we can't possibly watch all 1,000 bills every single day. There's certain issues every session that are very, very important, that are very active, that could be very beneficial or very damaging depending on where they go. And that's where we try to focus most of our attention. You've had over the past 3 sessions anywhere from 5 to 10 critical issues, and we know that means the council wants us to really focus on these, but not ignore all the rest. And there's the criteria. The first is significant impact possibility for Lewisville. The second is, how likely is it a bill's going to be filed? Obviously, a bill that said, Lewisville could not own cars would be a horrible thing, but it's not going to be filed, so we don't have to worry about that. Oh, I shouldn't have said it out loud. Is there an opportunity for the city to have a voice of discussion? Sometimes that means, frankly, the decision is pretty much in the bag. And sometimes it's just because the activity of that particular issue is in a different part of the state, different group of legislators, and we're not really going to be a part of it. And then the last one is compared to other issues. How important is it compared to all the other things we're watching? So this was 2021. This was 2 years ago. These were the 5 that you selected. Making sure we can still annex Castle Hills under the spa. We achieved that. We're done. Yay, Castle Hills is in, and we're glad. Trying to get relief from that destination sourcing. Well, we didn't get that, but the comptroller did push back effective date until this year. Looking at appropriate measures related to police reform and social equity, and there were some police reform bills passed. This is not a defund the police thing. This is everybody needs rules, and the Police Association and Chief Beaver have identified some things that we think could use some attention. Clean up the state mandated budget timelines that were acted in 2019. The law that passed in 2019 created a budget timeline that is very unwieldy, and really, you almost have to decide to raise tax rate before you even know what your property values are, which is a whole cart before the horse type thing. And then finally, keeping the May general election date. Every single year, there's multiple bills filed to get rid of that May election date, to put them all in November. And we prefer to have the flexibility to have 2 available dates. You'll see similar issues in 2019, 2017. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you'll see some things keep popping up over and over because they just keep being an issue. So I sent out a form to everybody. I appreciate the input you gave to me, and I took your input, I compiled it. On the left-hand side, these are 6 items that 2 or more of you selected as a critical issue. Affordable housing, which we specifically talk about trying to provide incentives for creating affordable housing, and also trying to find a way to protect seniors and fixed income and low income residents from these incredibly high rent increases. The budget timeline cleanup we talked about. Closing the dark box loophole. This is where a large retail store is vacant and they try to get their appraisal reduced dramatically because it's vacant right now. It's not worth very much, even though the next day it might not be. And it's not been a big thing in Texas. A couple of businesses have tried it. It's really big in Michigan and that area. And it's one that we can easily see coming to Texas. Keeping the May election date, sales tax sourcing, and school safety funding. This is, school safety is a big issue, and when you hear that school safety is a big issue, if it's that big of an important issue, then it shouldn't be just funded by cities and school districts. And this is one that Lewisville ISD has talked about, and we want to partner with them on this, that the state needs to provide some sort of grant program or funding program or provide some kind of help to ensure that our schools are safe. These were listed by 1 member. So certainly you can rearrange these however you want, but these were listed by 1. 1 is the lobbying, city lobbying. 1 is allowing park uses and utility corridors. 1 is, there was a bill filed last year that would require city council races to be partisan, and then it was amended to be, it's not required, but it's encouraged and voluntary, and then it went away. There's already been 1 filed for this year that would apply that to school boards. So there will be a bill filed for city councils, and we don't like that. We don't think we want to model what they're doing in Washington and Austin, because what we're doing works. Police reform, social equity was mentioned, redirection of revenue. This is the state taking money from us to use for state uses. Sales price reporting, this is for properties. There's an item in the Texas Constitution that for appraisal purposes, the property should be taxed at fair market value. And we believe that fair market value standard should remain. But it's hard to do when you don't know what the actual sales prices are. So there's been an effort made in the past couple of sessions to do this, but it has not really gained much momentum. Sales tax agreement relief we talked about, the Bed Bath & Beyond, and then transit investment. This is public transit, public transportation that the state should maybe make it easier to develop those systems. And then we have 3 here that y'all didn't mention, but we think we ought to at least throw it out there so you're aware that we're watching these. 1 is about not mandating meet and confer, collective bargaining, or civil service for all municipal employees, or any category of them. There have been bills filed the past 4 sessions, maybe 5 sessions, that would mandate meet and confer for all public safety personnel. And we get along with our police and fire. We love our police and fire. We have not needed this. But there have been bills that say mandate across, and again, one of those is great for some cities, not great for us. So we don't really want that one. The second one is about making it easier for a police officer with cause to be removed and make it harder for that officer to then just bounce to another department and carry that problem over to another department. Right now, the way the state tracks, there's a certain form, it's in the document, the paper I've got, there's a certain form that we send into the state why the officer was gone, and it's not working. The tracking's not working. And then lastly, protecting our current revenue streams, in particular public debt options. There's bills filed every session that will make it harder and harder to pass debt. One last year that started to move and then suddenly went away would have said that COs would not be part of your debt rate. And that would basically make COs untenable. And so anything that would make it more difficult to maintain our current revenue streams, including the option to issue debt, we want to protect those. So those are our topics. And what we're hoping for is to get some input about which 5 to 10 of these, maybe we back up to the slide that showed their stuff. And before you have that conversation, I want Brandy to be able to share a little bit of her insight with you because she knows a lot more down there than I do. And maybe she can give you some ideas about some of these topics. Back up. One more, right here.
Perfect. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. So this session, James mentioned there have been over 1,000 bills filed so far. And the biggest focus of this session is going to be property tax relief. We're already seeing that in a majority of bills that have been filed. The legislature is walking into the session with a $40+ billion surplus. And so most members want to see some kind of property tax relief. And that could impact the city in a lot of different ways. There's a whole lot of bills that have been filed already that would eliminate school district M&O taxes and replace that revenue with current state funding streams. But that's a big hole that they're creating for the future that's going to be difficult for them to continue to fill when the economy is not doing as well as it is now. Then there's also a lot of talk about eliminating school district property taxes and replacing that with a sales tax increase. There have been a couple of bills filed by Representative Murr, who's on the Appropriations Committee, who's a serious member, because a lot of the bills that have been filed so far are very much just refiles from last session, bills that went nowhere. But there's some serious bills on this property tax relief issue that have already been filed, and these are some of them. And so his bill would eliminate school district property taxes and increase the sales tax rate, the state portion of the sales tax rate, to 12%. So there's going to be a lot of different iterations of that as the session goes on, and they'll have different varying impacts to the city and maybe some opportunities to clean up some of the things that James was talking about from SB2 several sessions ago, which was the property tax bill. So we're very interested in what critical issues you want us to focus on this session, and so happy to weigh in on any of those as y'all have those conversations, depending on what it is that you want to focus on. And then just process-wise going forward, so this is coming back to you in December for final approval, and then we've been working with your staff. Denton County is doing something a little different this session, so December 7th, there's a kickoff breakfast to Denton County Days. And so we'll send that information to your staff today, and we'll make sure that you get that on your calendars if you want to attend. But that's with the entire legislative delegation. And then I've been working with your staff, and we've been having pre-meetings with all of the legislative delegation. As James mentioned, there's a lot of new faces there. So we've already set the stage for all of those conversations and plan, once this is finally adopted, to have one-on-ones with each of them and walk them through the critical issues that y'all adopt today. And then Denton County Days in Austin will be in March 21st and 22nd. We'll make sure those dates get on your calendars as well if any of you want to attend. So with that, I will just turn it over to council for open discussion on these critical issues, and we're happy to weigh in on them if you like.
And then I'll get one more comment from Brandy, if I could, please, Mayor. So when we were talking about this list, some of these we've expressed a concern. For example, close the dark box loophole. What we've not done is offer a solution. So the question then becomes, do we just sit there and watch and hope somebody files something, or does this suddenly become an issue that is so important to council that we actively pursue legislation? With some of these, that might be a discussion we have to have if you choose that as a key issue.
And I think what's important here is that what we talk about tonight doesn't mean that we're not going to be in opposition to some of these things. What it does is it gives staff and Brandy the power to just say, no, Lewisville has already said, their council has unanimously said they don't want this, without having to come back to us and get some sort of letter, and which may or may not make the timing down in Austin. I mean, I can go down there and say, TJ doesn't like something, but it's more powerful when it's the council of Lewisville doesn't want this to happen. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do is get that whittled down. Another piece on this to think about is, are there things we can just collapse to make a broader policy? I think about the dark box and the sales tax. Those are all sales, property tax related.
Protecting revenue.
Yeah, so they might just fall under protecting revenue. Just for two thoughts. So I'm gonna step back and let you guys give your 2 cents.
Absolutely. And one more comment, Mayor, as y'all are thinking about what should be included on this list, we would encourage you to focus on your top issues, the things that we think are going to be an issue this session, James mentioned that earlier, but I just wanted to reiterate it. You've got a much larger legislative program that can include everything, so that if a bill is filed on the dark box loophole, for example, that we would still track that and keep you informed about it. But if there's not going to be legislation filed, does that really need to be one of your critical issues? So just something for you to think about.
So, I mean, to your point, Mayor, I mean, it's almost like so many of these are related. You know, the affordable housing is really also about, I mean, it's twofold. It's about protecting our revenue because, you know, how are they gonna make housing more affordable? They can't control the market, so what are they gonna do? They're gonna cut the property taxes, which is our revenue. I do want us to be able to, I'm supportive of having more affordable housing options, but I also want to protect the revenue. So, I mean, so I guess that one's maybe multifaceted, but I also feel like the transit investment or public transportation, I was the one who put that in there. I think that's related to affordable housing too, because you know, those are the two biggest expenses in any household. If the state can invest more in public transportation, it seems like more people would have more options than, well, I've got to just figure out a way to afford my rent and I have to have a car. There's no other option. So I don't really know if you want a group. I mean, some of them would be more easy. Some of them are not going to be that easy to do.
Can I ask a question? So the point of the critical issues, though, is really to signpost because we're going to have a legislative agenda that's going to have all of these points on it, like Brandy said, so we can advocate for them. But really, this is to signpost. So if you collapse all of these for a functionality state, I mean, I think, like you said, there's some that it makes sense. You know, protecting of revenues could include many. But if affordable housing is really important that you're signposting that for the community, then it should say affordable housing, just to keep that in mind, of what the purpose of this is.
For those of us who put affordable housing, are we talking fixed income senior affordable housing, or are we talking affordable housing across the board?
I think across the board.
Across the board.
But I think, to TJ's point, where we may want to drill down a bit is, we can say affordable, we support affordable housing, you know, but we all do. But when we're talking about seniors, when you're looking at affordable housing for seniors, when you're looking at what the state does, and even HUD for that example, most of it is developer driven. There is a small carve out for assisting seniors to actually have with their rent or whatever they need to afford their house. So with the affordable housing for seniors, we need to get them help. We've got the housing corp that's going to be able to help them in a couple of years. They need help now.
Yes.
So with that one needs kind of a specific carve out to give us time to build up our, and this is not just I just left a legislative, I'm not an elected official lunch. This is something that's going on kind of throughout the state. It's just no solution, but I think we need to give this legislature some space, but also say, hey, this is where we need, the seniors specifically, this is where we need help. And be maybe a little more broad with affordable housing across the board, because
Yeah, we gotta drill down.
yeah, it's definitely developer driven, which is fine. But, you know, unless it's your grandmother or your grandfather who is maxing out their credit cards to pay for rent.
So do we have consensus on affordable housing with specific emphasis on finding ways to fill the gaps that inflation has caused for our seniors, for our fixed income seniors?
Yes.
And one thing that I might just add as well, as you're thinking about what this language is going to look like, is some specificity too. I mean, what is your recommendation on affordable housing? Because we're going to use this list to go talk to your legislative delegation and tell them these are the key issues that the city of Lewisville really wants you, our delegation, to focus on this session. And so we need to understand what it is that you're actually asking them to do in relation to affordable housing.
Okay. Budget timeline, I'm just going to kind of chew through these multiple members here because I'd like to make sure we get our county folks done before we have to go to council. Budget timeline cleanup, we've got consensus on that one?
Yes.
Yes. We've got an understanding on dark box loophole. I think, can we get consensus on a wide and shallow property tax policy from the state, where we don't have these carve-outs, and that kind of grabs in the, all the next slide where you were talking about changing the homestead exemptions.
Sorry, that was the next slide.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It kind of covers in and also the sales price reporting.
So just to make sure I understand, when you talk about, a property tax grouping, you're talking about protecting the constitutional provision for fair market appraisal for tax purposes? Because that's where dark box comes in.
Yeah, it comes in the sales price. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to lump that into.
And that would also affect appraisal caps.
Right. So something in that range, can we agree to that type of language, council, or get a consensus around policies that promote a shallow and wide tax base and not create more burden onto single-family properties?
Where would the, you mentioned something I thought was a bombshell, this is the concept of school districts not having property taxes anymore, but going to sales tax. Would that fall in what you're talking about as well? That seems big enough to carve out.
I think that's big
a
enough to
huge
carve
thing,
out.
Yeah, okay.
I'd
love to know more about that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say the last thing you said again.
Promoting a wide but shallow property tax system that does not shift the burden of property taxes onto single-family homes.
What is wide and shallow?
What in the heck does that
The
mean?
more people you get in the law, the more that are covered,
Okay.
the shallower the tax value has to be to get to the number you need. The minute you start creating carve-outs, it gets narrower. So if commercial gets these extra tools, it gets narrower. And that means more burden gets put on those who don't have all the flexibility. So I don't have the ability to say that house is empty, so my house should be valued as an empty house. I don't have a dark box option. Commercial does. I can't hide my property value typically as a single-family homer because there's a mortgage involved.
Right.
Whereas somebody else can pay cash, or they can do a swap, and then the value doesn't get shown.
And all three of these bills involving appraisal caps would clearly fall under the fair market value standard, because they all do affect what level of appraisal. If you chose that, I would know that these are issues that are critical issues to you.
So is property tax a key issue for us?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Trying to not shift the burden onto single family is my particular emphasis, but I get that feel from most of the folks I've talked to.
We'll get some wording for you to look at when we approve it.
I'm just,
Thank you.
yeah, I was just wanting to get a better understanding, because like, for example, in Lewisville, the majority of our property tax comes from other sources, so
Sure.
commercial properties.
Sure.
And I'm lumping like rental properties into that, multifamily and
Yep.
things like that, so, I mean.
But even
I think the
then,
single family's probably getting a pretty good deal.
so
But I think what you're
Heavy
saying, but
infrastructure
Yeah.
for single family, so what I'm trying to understand is, you're saying that you don't support cuts that would go across the board, because you feel like that needs to go just for the single family?
no, if a cut goes across the board, that's one thing. It's a reduction of burden off of one segment, which means you have to. So I get $100, but if I give Bob's Chop House the ability, because they're a restaurant, to now not be valued at $1.50, they're now valued at $1. I got to get that 50 cents from somewhere else, and it's going to come from this side, which is typically going to be single-family homeowners or single-family properties. That's when you look at how the because you've got to get $100, right? So I'm not really into anything that sits. I personally am against a lot of these special riders that they did give for name a subgroup. You don't have to pay property tax because you're a widowed or a veteran or something else. I mean, there's a whole bunch of those. I don't like the sales tax holiday weekends because, again, that sales tax is counted on by folks, and that little weekend really just serves to create more profit for a business. It doesn't actually reduce anybody's burden.
Right.
So I don't like the shell game that gets played because what it ends up doing is it creates more burden on who's left. Let's not even call it single family, let's just call it more burden on who's left. If you have 100% that get 1%, or you get 90 now that are getting 1.1%. Because I guess still got to get the same $100.
Okay.
So I might caution you, based on my previous comments about property tax relief being their number one issue this session. And there's already a sentiment amongst the legislature that cities shouldn't weigh into that issue based on the legislation that James mentioned earlier about prohibiting cities from lobbying on that issue. So why don't you let us take a stab at some language that would talk about prohibiting special exemptions and that sort of thing without wading into the broader property tax issue. So we can we can certainly work on that language and bring that back to you for your consideration.
Council okay with that? I'm just trying to chew through these multiple members ones first.
Understood.
Consensus on having the option of November or May elections for municipalities?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're taking away from anybody. It's about inclusive. Sales tax sourcing, I think we're with consensus on that we played by the rules and now we're getting hit.
Yeah.
School safety funding. Again, we're blessed. We have a school district that is carrying quite a bit of that load, but we're also carrying a big chunk. So we're all in consensus that we'd love to see some options since the state is mandating more security. So let's look at the one-member options, and I'll leave this for popcorn.
Well, the city voice in Austin, I think if we don't fight to keep the option of paying dues to organizations that have lobbyists, paying lobbyists ourselves, all of these other things are going to be almost impossible to fight because we don't have the capability of having staff watch all these things. And so to me, that is the top priority because it affects everything else.
Other thoughts?
I think that's a really good point, Bob. I hadn't considered that aspect of things. Whenever I see stuff like that, I always think about what's the other side. So why do they want to prohibit lobbying? And I can't come up with a good reason that makes sense to my head.
And why to only one group and not to another group?
Yeah.
So I think the ability to have advocates, paid advocates in Austin is absolutely something we would want to see.
Yes.
And good governance you want to hear, because like to James's point, what's good for us, I mean, we have two neighbors very close to us, it may not work for them. So
Right.
we all need to be able to have a voice to say, to at least tell them, it would be nice, it would be great if we had people who want to hear. I think we do need to fight for that.
This, okay, I think we've got direction on that. Is there anything on this listed by one member list that somebody has a question about or thinks shouldn't be moved forward?
I have the opposite. I didn't think about the transit investment because that does link to quality of life and mobility.
Right.
I think that one probably should be elevated to, I'd go, as a multiple member that slide that over because I think that's something that we have to do. Being on RTC, I think that's critical.
And that one, right now, shifting that one.
Yep.
Right.
And we're combining a couple.
And then, yeah, a couple of those are getting lumped in, it sounds like. I'll back any specific legislation that our police and fire department want to come with.
Do the last slide, please. There we go. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mhm.
That would be our legislative model.
I would tell you the first bullet point is highly unlikely to pass in this political
Yeah, just,
environment.
that's,
It's not, I mean,
It should probably be on your long list, but maybe not on the
Yeah.
political issue.
right.
I do like the improved process.
I really like that one. So, how many times have you read about an officer that went from this department to that department, and then all of a sudden, he's in real trouble with this department. But then you're part of the news because, yeah.
Texas Police Chiefs Association has actually drafted specific recommendations that they sent to Austin last time. They've sent them again this time. We would not come up with our own ideas. We would use theirs.
All right.
Brandy, I have a quick question. On the list that we were just talking about on the last slide, much like you just said for the last one about the meet and confer, are there any items on here that you feel like are probably not very likely to gain any traction or be an issue that we need to worry about?
The dark box loophole, certainly, but we're gonna generalize that language, so I think y'all have addressed that already. And then affordable housing, the question would just be, what specifically are you wanting to advocate for? Because the state really doesn't have a role in affordable housing, much of a role in affordable housing right now. So we need to further define the ask, I think, on that one.
Fair.
I have a question about a bullet that's on up here. I've never seen it in the list, actually. So in 2019, I forget House bill it was, but allowed for the alternative, I guess actually it's a standard building materials. I could drop a shipping container on the property. I heard that this is, to my knowledge, this hasn't been a problem in Lewisville yet, but I hate for a resident to encounter that and then become an issue. So the horse is already out of the barn at that juncture. I had heard that there was something going through legislation that was trying to clean that up a little bit. Is that true? What do you know about that? That gives me a lot of concern and pause.
So it's on the larger list on your legislative agenda already to support modifications to that bill. But keep in mind the Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan, is who carried that legislation when he was a House member to put those, or to prohibit the restrictions. So it's highly unlikely that any cleanup language would pass.
I guess bad decisions can be made at any point on the chain, I guess.
Because it's on our list.
It is on your list.
Because it's on our list, if something were filed, we could react to it. And we did, when we were putting together this. I spoke to Claire and spoke to the planning, and we kind of found a way to work what's there. It's not ideal, but if something were filed, we would have the ability to react to it.
I think you've got some marching orders.
Yes.
May need to do a little bit more refinement, but that's why we have you here. Council, thanks for being flexible on this, and I would encourage you to take a look. There is a lot in here to kind of wrap your head around, so if you have an opportunity now that we've kind of got it funneled down, maybe we can work on some more distinct language, or if you're missing a piece that you want to have addressed, let's make sure we get that captured. Brandy's always been super available, so.
We'll be back on the 19th with the full final document.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to move to item D, discussion of options for reallocation of CDBG CV funding and general fund social service agency funding. We have our neighborhood services manager, Ashley Farron, available to present, and then we do have some of our friends from the county maybe to be able to help give us some context as well.
As quick as possible while also explaining HUD nuances, so that'll be fun. So back at the first meeting of October, we came and brought some agency agreements where we pulled some funding from certain agencies that had received CDBG COVID funding. So we're here to talk about the reallocation of some of that unallocated funding and some other options. So a little backstory on HUD and how it works with our funding. Every year they say this is how much funding you're going to be receiving, and then we have to put an annual action plan together, and in that plan we say this is how we're going to spend those funds. They then approve that plan, and then we get the funds. So in fiscal year 2019 to 2020, we received our first round of COVID funding, and we had to amend our annual action plan for 2019 on saying how we would spend those dollars so that HUD could then approve it. So we did a couple needs assessments back then and brought different categories to council for approval. These are those categories: mortgage assistance, food insecurity, mental health, child care, internet connectivity, and domestic violence response. You'll notice rental assistance was not included. At that time, there was tons of money coming into rental assistance from other sources. So we didn't want to duplicate resources and efforts when there was tons of money flowing in on that. So we wanted to look at categories that were not getting as much attention as was necessary in our community. So if we wanted to add any categories, we would have to go and amend that action plan again. So that's just something to think about as we move forward tonight. But the timeline, what that would look like is we would have to update that plan, and then we are required to do a 30-day public comment period on our action plan, which would include a public hearing at a council meeting. And then we would have to open an application because new agencies would have to apply for that new category. So that takes at least a month, and then our CDBG advisory committee would then review, score, and then create a recommendation, budget applications, or excuse me, awards, and then that would be brought to council for approval. And then we could execute agreements with those agencies.
So in a perfect world, 90 days.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect.
Absolutely perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Not with holidays in the middle of all this as well. Sorry, this is a little tiny, but these are all the agencies that were awarded. So we got 2 pots of COVID funding, CV1 and CV3. CV2 went to the state directly. We did benefit from that. We did get some funding that went specifically to eviction prevention, but that money was spent very quickly. So these agencies received funding within those categories that we showed earlier. The ones that are grayed out have spent all their funds. They spent it very quickly. They got it out the door. The ones that are not highlighted are the ones that still have funding available. And then based on those agreements we brought back in October, we have a little over $284,000 in unallocated funds right now.
So can you talk about that asterisk on Friends of Shiloh? And then are all of these, when you say remaining funds, do some of them have pending reimbursements they just haven't hit yet because you're trying to prove up costs?
So, Friends of Shiloh Garden, they have an asterisk because they have submitted all of their monthly reports, so they have to submit monthly reports to be then reimbursed. Well, the reports that they have submitted would be reimbursed that entire $19,000, but we're working through a lot of challenges on their reporting, so we're not going to reimburse them until they have a perfect report. So we're waiting on that. We're getting through that with them. The majority of these are up to date. I think this, we did update this number for BCL. Yes, BCL was updated. It was not drawn when we put this.
So just so I'm clear, the Friends of Shiloh submitted a report they amount to $19,400 just to change some of their
Once they get that.
reporting. There's an administrative problem with the report. Okay, thank you.
We're working with it through them.
Yeah, okay.
So all of our funds, our COVID funds, have to be spent within 6 years, and 80% of those funds must be spent within the first 3 years. So this is where HUD gets a little, well, on a good day, HUD is non-committal when we ask questions, but now that we get to the COVID funding, it's an unknown for them, so they don't want to commit to something that they may not know the answer to. So when they say that we have to spend 80% of the funds within 3 years, and I ask, well, what happens on September 30th, what happens? They say, well, the remaining funds could be recaptured. Keyword, could. So this is where it gets a little unknown. But what we do know is we got $1.2 million in COVID funding. 80% of that is $967,000. As of last week, we had drawn down $665,000. So we have a year, this fiscal year, to spend $301,000. Get it out into our community through our nonprofits. So shrinking that chart down a little bit, these agencies, their agreements end December 31st that still have funding available to them. We set that December 31st date, so if we needed to reallocate funds, we had the time before that September 30th date. So these are the agencies that still have funding. You will see they are also the agencies. The majority of them are agencies that we took funding back from. Journey to Dream, that last $4,000, they're going to spend it this month. So I'm not working with that. So let's talk some strategy about how we're going to reallocate those funds. So the easiest option is we already have agencies that applied, were approved by our committee, and we know they can spend the dollars. So getting funding into their hands again to get out into our community. Our suggestion, a quick, easy suggestion, Children's Advocacy Center of North Texas, CASA, and Salvation Army. We've already spoken with them, asked them about their capacity, and this is at their capacity right now to spend the dollars quickly. But, you know, we just looked at those agencies that have till December. If they still have funding left, there's a couple options with them. If they are spending consistently and doing a good job on their reporting and everything, we could extend it. We could extend their agreement into June of 2023, just so that they have some more opportunity to spend those funds. A lot of those agencies had a really hard time getting those programs off the ground, hiring people. So now that they finally got their footing under them, they're spending the dollars. It's just not within our current agreement. Or they're not spending the dollars, they aren't able to get their reports in a correct manner. We end that agreement on December 31st, and then now we have more unallocated funds. So if we are comfortable with funding these 3 agencies out of those unallocated dollars we have, we would have $50,000 unallocated. So what do we do with that? So there's 2 areas that we as staff feel are the greatest needs, food insecurity and senior rental assistance. We've had that senior committee, they come to council, they speak at those, we have a monthly meeting with them. They also attended our CDBG Advisory Committee public hearing on November 15th to express their needs to our CDBG committee, and the committee really felt it. They called me the next day and they're really like, what can we do? How do we fix this? Commissioner Mitchell was also there as a voice for them. And then regarding food insecurity, Tarrant Area Food Bank recently gave a presentation where saying that 11.95% of Denton County is food insecure, but they are only able to distribute to 3.29%. So that's an additional 9 million pounds of food that is not in our community. So 2 really big needs right now.
Pause for a second, just a second. So, and really what we're talking about is the reallocation of not just that leftover 50,000, but the future. So come December, we will have some likely that we're going to pull back. So we're kind of lumping those in together from a strategy standpoint.
Yeah. So there's a couple options we can look at. Reallocating specifically to food insecurity. This is a quick one. It's already an approved category in our action plan. So we just open an RFP, we open an application, agencies that are able to provide that can apply. We open it for a month, we have our CDBG committee review score and create that recommendation budget to be brought to council, and then we execute those agreements. So it's a quicker, still at least 2 months, but it's going to be a quicker turnaround.
All right, we're not going to be able to get through the rest of this.
I tried.
So no, you did good, it's my fault. What I'm going to do is we're going to break into our regular meeting, and then we're going to come right back to finish this up for the workshop, and then we'll do the pollinator program at the end. So we'll get this part because we've got to make a decision. Or no, we don't have to make a decision. We get to get some consensus. We need to get some consensus and have a discussion about it. But I want to get that cleared off the plate, and then we'll come back for the pollinators at the end, like we would normally do for work session. So we'll dip in and out here a couple of times. There'll be a little tap dancing. There we go. It's Monday, November 21st, 7:01 p.m., and I'm calling this meeting of the Lewisville City Council to order. We do have a quorum. First up, we have our Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Meredith with our invocation.
Please join me in a moment of silent contemplation. Thank you.
And pledges, Councilmember Cade.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right. With that, we are going to go back into workshop. So we're going to go ahead and pause the general meeting, go back into the workshop to finish one of our items, and then we will come back out here for our regular session. So, Council, we're going to go back into workshop.
Alrighty, so our second option is shifting these unallocated dollars to rental assistance. So there is a couple things we need to talk about with this one. One, no matter what, if we choose this option, I feel like I can hear there's the amendment to our annual action plan. So this is not an approved category by HUD, so we will have to take that back to HUD for approval and all that timeline that goes with. Something that we need to consider, yes, rental assistance is eligible. So we had a meeting with HUD recently to talk about some different problem solvings for HUD, CBG, CV funds specifically. And when I brought up the senior rental assistance and talking about that, he had a little concern because when you talk about COVID funding, it has to have that COVID tie back, prepare, respond to COVID. And he asked, well, how is that responding to COVID? And so we talked about the inflation and what goes into that. And so his concern is because they are on fixed income, there may be a challenge to have that COVID tie back. So this is something that us as staff, we're gonna have to do a little bit digging into. So we definitely think this is an option. We are just gonna have to do some digging on what that COVID tie back is going to look like because they have to provide that when they receive assistance through these funds. So again, amending this action plan, that will take at least 3 months to do that.
So,
Go ahead.
kind of before you roll off of that, one of the things, I've talked with the seniors, and Jenny County United Way, actually, I think it's the ARM2 funds that they're distributing now, and they added those seniors to that list. We may want to maybe tie into that. Actually, that would be my preference, that we, even though it may take a month or two more, that we tie into that with the stipulation that it's for Lewisville funds, and we need to let residents know this is a one-time thing. This is not going to be a continuing funding mechanism, but this will be something that will help our seniors and maybe to fill the gap, not paying their whole rent, but $200 here, $300 here to help them make their ends meet. Would be my preference. That we tie into a program that's already started, that they're on the list for, and if they've already got it, then we can go to someone else who sort of needs the help.
Yes, so I was going to say, so if this is the direction, and if we can show that we can use these fundings for that, we would have to go out for some, basically go out for an RFP and have anybody, and obviously we want United Way to compete for that. And that would be ideal, is to have them, if they were able to have the capacity to do that. We did want to talk about that funding right here, because one of the other things we were concerned about is, are we duplicating resources as well, like we previously, but I think what we've determined is that's not the case. We wouldn't be duplicating because of the amount of backlog that this funding has.
Yes, last week we spoke with Gary Henderson at United Way asking how their program was going. Their funding is coming from the Treasury Department, which has way more amount of documents that people are needing to provide, and it's extensive and challenging, especially for our senior population when they have to upload it online. The wait list right now is currently 700 fully completed applications, where there's another 2,900 that have not been finished, but they're in the line, they're in the pipeline, and they are only able to review and approve 100 a month right now. So the great thing, ERA2 funds are great. It's helping 18 months worth of assistance, but that timing is taking a long time. And then they do have 2 priority groups. The first one is people that have a notice to vacate or an eviction notice. And then the second tier is those with children, seniors, and those with disabilities, which is a very large group when you think about compared to the eviction. If someone is below with a notice to vacate, they're number 500, they're going to jump to the top of the line because they have that eviction notice. So it's going to have some challenges with this program. Also with our CDBG CV funds, it's a limit of 6 months. We can only assist 6 months, where this is 18 months. So something that you guys graciously did for us this year was increase our city fund to social service agencies. So there was an additional $70,000 in general funds specifically allocated for social service agencies. But because of what the timeline looks like for our application process for our agencies, those funds have not been allocated yet. So they're sitting there ready to be spent with our nonprofits, and hopefully this is an opportunity to be that stopgap. Right now, that's a quick turnaround that we could do these funds. It's a lot more leniency also with general dollars versus HUD funding. It still is going to require an RFP. We are still going to have applications, create contracts with nonprofits, and then the great thing is it's not going to require our annual action plan amendment. We can do this however we want. We can make this program ourselves. So if unallocated senior funds can be used, we can transition from these 70,000 straight into those COVID funds as well with those agencies that have applied. So open for discussion moving forward. We're taking these funds to these 3 agencies, Children's Advocacy, CASA, and Salvation Army, and taking those unallocated 70,000 directly into our senior rental assistance, and then exploring opportunities with those COVID fundings, whether that's food insecurity or rental assistance for our seniors.
So our thought is we would continue to explore the senior rental assistance. If that does not work and we just get a pretty clear, or just our spidey senses are telling us this is not a go with HUD, we would transition to the food insecurity, but with the goal of trying to get the senior rental assistance with the CE funding. So with that, we're open for your discussion.
So assuming there's not, once I guess the COVID funds are done, you mentioned the ERA too, is there any other programs that we could have a consistent senior rental assistance thing on the docket?
Not right now, but their application for the next program year funding is about to open in the spring, so that's an opportunity for agencies to apply for rental assistance with our regular funds.
The hard part on this is really trying to come up with a stopgap if there is potential legislative changes or, on the federal level, but, I think providing ongoing for the remainder of perpetuity, being that stopgap and helping rental assistance with seniors is going to be difficult. But, to us, this was just really to help in the interim.
Well, as we get more of that type of housing, because we're one of the few communities in this area that actually embraces that kind of density and 55 and older. Yeah, 55 and up, guys. Okay, 55 and up. Just saying. I have some real concerns about creating a in perpetuity when we have so many other needs. I guess if the CDBG, when they do their community assessment and feedback, if that bubbled up as one of the primary needs, then that would be a different conversation. But I don't think that's in the top 3 to 5 currently.
I also think that your point was well made with regard to, we've got the Public Facility Corporation that is trying to come up with solutions for the next, in the next 2 years. So this is really a
That was
good
Brandon.
stop. I'm sorry, Brandon. Why be all?
Okay. We dress alike. It's okay.
That's true.
See resemblance.
We're always getting them mixed up.
Brother from another mother.
I guess that kind of goes into the point that, just acknowledging that I'm fully supportive of this measure to use the 70,000 in that way. I think it's very, very needed. I think it'll be a big blessing to a lot of people that are in our community. It's not a solution to the problem.
No.
It doesn't help fix anything. It just kind of is a little Band-Aid. And I'm happy to do it. But we also need to be,
We need a solution.
if Brady's still here or not, but we need to be pushing on our legislatures to help fix this issue, because
It's not going to get any better. It's going to continue.
No.
They're limited. Their income is fixed. It's not like someone whose income that they can go get another job or whatever.
Right.
So something has to be done. This is a great, although it is a Band-Aid, it'll help stop the bleed for right now, hopefully.
Just out of curiosity, these allocations, 150, 29, 55, how was that determined? Is that based on what they thought they could get
Yes,
through?
we asked what their capacity would be.
Okay.
We did not give them options. We just said, we have some unallocated funds. What's your capacity? And they suggested those dollars.
Which basically covers all but that 50,000, which makes me feel more comfortable that we can hit our goals, which I know when I was on CDBG, that was always the, are we gonna make it? Are we gonna make it? So I have some comfort. I don't have much faith that the federal government's gonna come back and say that, yeah, we can take that 50K and move it. But
We
let's,
don't want their money back.
yeah, let's,
So we
yeah.
need to figure out how to send it.
We have to figure out how to help them get through and understand that this is COVID related. So.
I had one more thought, but then you were talking and I forgot about it. Hold on.
55 plus.
We're not there yet. Oh, yes, I was gonna say, once we, are able to push this out for the seniors, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but part of this whole process, just making sure that they're aware of all the other programs that are available for food insecurity or anything like that, because I think maybe there's, they just don't, I don't know what all is out there, so they probably don't either.
Yeah, we were brainstorming, Shantae and I were brainstorming about whether or not we could bring in our librarians and have Ashley kind of help as resources and bring Gary to really talk about resources and have a class for them.
That would be awesome.
When we do the community fair like we did at Next Step Center a couple of years back, I don't recall seeing lots of seniors there. I recall seeing lots of families with young kids, and maybe that's an angle that we need to look at as far as the education piece for years forward.
So I would throw in there that the seniors had a fair, it was an election, it was during an election. The Friday was a pretty big storm. They had a lot of different agencies there, including Gary kind of presented the portal, the United Way portal, where it starts them with all the agencies. So he kind of gave them a kind of brief training. And we kind of talked about actually the library, maybe including the library to help them as well. I will be there, kind of adopted grandson now, so, but, I mean, all this sounds great. One question about, so the mental health, what's the deadline on making sure that they have those funds? Is it, you said June or July?
We sent, it would be to June,
Okay.
June 2023.
It still gives us a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So. Council, any other comments? I'm hearing consensus around this. Good plan. All right.
Thank you.
All right, we will keep this workshop session open for the last one at the end of council. We're going to go back into regular session. We lose our CM. All right, we're going to call this meeting back into regular session. First up, I have our presentation, which is a Certificate of Achievement for Planning Excellence. We do have Staryn Fauché, representing the American Planning Association Texas chapter, presenting the award.
Good evening. I'm Staryn Fauché, the Section Director for the North Central Section of the American Planning Association's Texas chapter. On behalf of APA Texas, it is a great pleasure that I present the 2022 Certificate of Achievement for the Richard R. Lilly FAICP Planning Excellence to the City of Lewisville. This honor recognizes the professional planning standards demonstrated by the planning staff and the funding and support exhibited by the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission. More specifically, Lewisville has met the chapter's goals for increasing awareness for professional planning, recognizing planning departments which meet certain professional requirements, enhancing neighborhood and citizen recognition of planning efforts, encouraging the funding and professional training for commissioners and staff, and aiding in economic development and the community's image. Lewisville was one of 44 Texas communities honored for planning excellence in October 2022, and the annual chapter award ceremony in El Paso. You can be proud in the fact that you have consistently received this annual recognition since the Planning Excellence Award program began over 20 years ago. Lewisville has been an inspiration to many communities over the years due to your success in planning over the past 2 decades that has transformed Lewisville into a diverse, thriving, and exciting community. The multitude of state and national planning awards bestowed upon Lewisville over the years is a testament to the impact that good planning has done for your community. Most notably, your 2020 National APA Gold Level Achievement Award for the implementation of the Lewisville 2025 Vision Plan. The APA Board of Directors and 2,700 members of the Texas chapter send their congratulations and look forward to your continued success as leaders in the community planning in Texas. Planning Director Richard Lukey will now come forward and introduce and recognize the city's planning staff.
Mayor Gilmore, members of the City Council, I am very honored and humbled to work with the most talented group of planners I've ever worked with. We want to do something a little bit different tonight, and I wanted them to be a part of this, and wanted all of you to meet them in person. You may have seen their names associated with many projects over the years. They are literally the troops on the ground. They spend every day serving our residents, our property owners, the development community. They also work very hard in realizing the vision of our adopted long-range plans. So with that, I first want to recognize Planning Manager Michelle Berry. She has been on our team for almost 5 years. She's got an anniversary coming up. Senior Planner John Beckham. He has been on the team for a little over 6 years. Joe Duquet is one of our newest members. He's been here almost 1 year, and he's really hit the ground running. Patty Dominguez, she has been part of our planning team for a little over a year, but she's been with the City of Lewisville for over 8 years, previously in the Municipal Court and the City Secretary's office. Jace Gillis is our planning intern. He's been with us about a year, and he is a senior at the University of North Texas in the city planning program. And we have one person missing. On Wednesday, we will have our newest planner join our team. Her name is Alexis Barnett, and I know she's destined for great things. So we're really excited for her to become a part of team planning in Lewisville. I really want to thank the council for all of your support for all these years. We could not do this without your support. And we also want to thank APA for all of the tools that they've given us, the cutting edge tools. That keeps us on our toes and helps us to do really the innovative things that we've been doing here in Lewisville. The planning team definitely looks forward to facilitating even greater things in the future here in Lewisville. So again, we want to thank you for all of your support. And with that, I think we'll take a quick photo, and that will conclude our presentation.
Not only do we need to thank our planners, but we need to thank our residents for giving us the material, the direction, and the strategies that we have so that these guys can put that all down and give us a document. One thing that I think Lewisville does better than any other municipality that I've seen, and I've seen a bunch, is we take that bit of paper and we turn it into reality. And it's because these guys in the planning department find a way to distill all that communication down into something that's usable and definable and has value. It doesn't just sit in a binder. So I thank you guys so much for that. It's really important. It's been great for me to have served along in that 20-year period of time and lived here and seen what we've been able to do. So it's pretty awesome.
Thank you, Mayor.
With that, we're going to move into the Visitor Citizens Forum. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor rather than to individual council members or staff. Speakers should speak clearly and state their name and address prior to beginning their remarks. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes for testimony. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Action can only be taken at a future meeting. City Secretary, do we have any comments?
No, sir, we've not received any.
Thank you. We're going to move on to item E, consent agenda. All of the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so request. For a citizen to request removal of any item, a speaker card or e-comment must be filled out and submitted to the city secretary. City Secretary, do we have any speaker or e-comments?
No, sir, we do not.
Council, we've been recommended to remove item E2 to a date certain of December 5th, so I'm going to need a motion that covers that, please.
Is that Councilwoman Cade?
That was Councilmember Cade. And that's a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of E2, which will be scheduled to a date certain of December 5th. Okay, thank you. All right, I have a motion and I have a second from Councilmember Troyer. Council, if you would please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Council. Item F10, regular hearing, consideration of interlocal agreement between Denton County and the City of Lewisville for a consolidated communication system for public safety and governmental services and authorization for the city manager or her designee to execute the agreement. This interlocal agreement between Denton County and the City of Lewisville provides for dependable and mission-critical communication services for use by each organization and their users. This consolidated system will provide coverage for Lewisville and Denton County to ensure safe, effective, and efficient communication and benefit the greatest number of citizens in each jurisdiction. The Texas Government Code provides authority for the local governments of the state of Texas to enter into interlocal agreements for the purpose of performing functions and services set forth in the Interlocal Cooperation Act. It's recommended that the City Council approve the agreement and authorize the city manager or her designee to execute the agreement as set forth in the caption above. Council?
Motion to approve the agreement and authorize the city manager or her designee to execute the agreement as set forth in the caption.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Looks like I've got Councilmember Meredith. Okay, thank you, sir. Council, if you'd please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item 11, consideration of an ordinance amending the fee schedule of the City of Lewisville by amending fees related to the approval and addition of a Unified Development Code as Volume 2 of the Code of Ordinances. Beginning in 2018, city staff began working with consultants to review and address needed changes to development codes. These changes were necessary in order to implement the Lewisville 2025 plan and adopt the small area plans to adjust to new conditions, to address redevelopment and infill development on challenging properties, to eliminate conflicts, and to streamline development processes. On November 7th, 2022, the final public hearing was held and the ordinance amending the Lewisville City Code, including the addition of a Unified Development Code, was approved by City Council. Approval of the ordinance, as detailed in the caption above, authorizes changes to the fee schedule as they relate to the addition of the Unified Development Code. It's recommended that the City Council approve the ordinance as set forth. Council, entertain a motion?
Move to approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
City Attorney?
This is an ordinance of the Lewisville City Council amending the Lewisville City Code, Section 2-201, fee schedule of the City of Lewisville by amending fees related to the approval and addition of a Unified Development Code as Volume 2 of the Code of Ordinances, providing for repealer, severability, and effective date, and declaring an emergency.
Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. Item 12, consideration of appointment of a Blue Ribbon Capital Planning Committee. A Blue Ribbon Bond Committee has been appointed historically to review and prioritize staff capital project requests in advance of general obligation bond elections. The last committee served in 2014 and recommended capital projects to the City Council that resulted in a 10-year GO bond program approved by the voters in 2015. A total of $118.1 million of GO bonds were authorized by this program and have been sold to date. The remaining $16.9 million of authorized GO bonds are expected to be sold in the spring of 2023. As discussed during the City Council workshop on October 17, 2022, staff is recommending that the City Council appoint a Blue Ribbon Capital Planning Committee to recommend projects for the next 10-year bond program and bond election anticipated for October 2023. It is recommended that the City Council appoint the Blue Ribbon Capital Planning Committee. With that, we'll have some conversation, folks. We have a list of individuals that have been reached out to and have said that they were interested in participating. We had Councilmember Jones add another name to the list, and then Ms. Prit Patel had expressed her interest here in an email just recently. With that, I don't think we want a committee that's any larger than 9. I also think that we want to make sure that those that are on the committee don't heavily skew towards one part or another of the city, but can encompass. And of course, these folks, not only are they going to be making recommendations, but ideally that they support it with their their time and treasure as well. So that would be another component to that, is making sure that these are folks that will get out there and are connected to the community and can have those conversations. So with that, I'll entertain some discussion.
I was going to say there's, kind of there's probably 3 or 4 that kind of jump out at me on this list that I just wanted to throw out there and see if we could get consensus on those. One would be Mayor Dean Ukert. Another would be Karen Locke, Russ Kerbo, and Steve Southwell.
Other comments?
I like those. Those are all great recommendations.
Those were definitely my short list to ask for.
Same for me as well.
Okay, so that gets us 4. I've had lots of opportunities to work with Britt over the years. She's outstanding, knows the city, and knows the intricacies of both sides, being a resident and being somebody who works in the municipality as well as not-for-profits. So I would like to see if we could add her to that list.
I like her as well because she's also, she works with a COG right now, I believe, and
Yes.
I think there's probably some insider knowledge of that as well, and potential funding coming forward might help guide the process as well.
That gets us to 5.
I'd like to recommend a couple, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Very excited to see 4 names from Castle Hills on this list. So being newly elected, being newly annexed into Lewisville, there's a deep passion for most of my neighbors to want to start contributing to Lewisville. So excited to see 4 names out here. To that end, I'd like to recommend Colleen Marchetti. She has a rich background in not only Castle Hills government, but also already involvement in Lewisville. And then Guy Harris as well. Guy Harris was one of the original residents on one of the boards in Castle Hills, and he's been involved in Castle Hills since 2008, I believe. Also a Castle's ambassador during the annexation process, and a graduate of the Citizen University.
I'd like to see Angela Llewellyn on that committee as well. She's been rock solid for a number of years. How many do we have?
That's 8.
Well,
That'd be 8.
yeah, if we add those 3, right?
Yeah, Colleen, Guy, and Angela. So we have Dean, Karen, Russ, Steve, Pritt, Colleen, Guy, Angela. That would just leave us one another.
I'm good with Brandon's
And
recommendation.
my recommendation would be to add former mayor, goodness, I'm drawing a
James
McClinton to the list. He's former mayor of Topeka, Kansas. He also works for Tarrant County, so he has good municipal experience. He's been a resident for quite some time, so I think he may add a nice diverse opinion. He's not as wrapped up in the city as I would like him, but I'm trying to wrap him into the city a little bit more. But I did talk to him, and he said he was willing to serve.
A vast array of knowledge there.
Yes. And he served on city council prior to that in Topeka, so. And if there's no objection or any other people.
All right. That gives us 9?
That would give us 9.
All right. So does anyone want to make that motion?
Who's got them written down?
I have them written down if you would like for me to read all of them. Okay. We all good? Okay. So I move that we appoint the following members to the Blue Ribbon Capital Planning Committee. Dean Ukert, Steve Southwell, Karen Locke, Russ Kerbo, Prit Patel, Angela Llewellyn, Colleen Marchetti, Guy Harris, and James McClinton.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Motion passes 6-0. I want to preemptively thank all 9 of these folks for the amount of hard work they're about to do.
I also want to say thank you to the people who made the short list, but everybody was a good candidate. I appreciate everybody's willingness to serve on this committee.
And
I've served on it. It is a commitment.
yeah, and even though you're maybe not on the list of folks that have been appointed, your voice will be and asked for and absolutely can be heard.
Right.
Absolutely, yes.
So, item 13, consideration of acceptance of the resignation of Tanya Gandy from place number 1 on the Arts Advisory Board. Declare a vacancy exists, and consideration of an appointment to fill the vacancy on the Arts Advisory Board. Ms. Gandy has served in place number 1 of the Arts Advisory Board since 2018. This position is required to be filled by a person who is employed in a professional or managerial position by a business or a branch of a business that is located in the Lewisville city limits and has a minimum of 100 employees. Ms. Gandy has advised that she's going to be taking a position with the medical city of Plano and will no longer be working in Lewisville. It's recommended that the council accept the resignation and declare a vacancy until such time as a qualified applicant is found.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the resignation of Tanya Gandy in place 1 on the Arts Advisory Board, declare a vacancy exists, and consider an appointment to fill the vacancy on the Arts Advisory Board at a future day. Are we doing that tonight or?
No,
So
once we find someone.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second.
Just one comment. Tanya Gandy, I've known her. Was in my Leadership Lewis class, 33, but the best class. She's moving on to, I believe, Medical City Plano. So I want to wish her luck and thank her for her service in Lewisville.
All right. Motion passes 6-0. Item G, reports. Reports about items of community interest regarding which no action will be taken. I'm going to start to my right tonight with Councilmember Meredith.
Yes, Mayor, I've got some library reports. Obviously, the library will be closed on Thanksgiving and remain closed through Friday, November 25th. It'll reopen at 9 a.m. on Saturday, November 26th. Family board games for families with children of all ages, Tuesday, November 22nd, 1 to 3 p.m. No registration or ticket required at the Glenmore Savage Community Room. And All the Rest Book Club for adults, Tuesday, November 22nd, 6:30 to 7:30. No registration required at the Crawford Meeting Room. That's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Troyer?
I have a short list of things going on at the Lewisville Grand Theater. First of all, activities, the gift of art, an art sale exhibition at the Grand will be on set for December 3rd. Then Chandler Speaks country show scheduled for December 8th. And King's Return, We Four Kings on December 10th. And then, as always, the acoustic jam sessions on Friday evenings at 6 o'clock. And that's what I have for tonight. Well, I guess I should add, we did have a great council, and several staff members had a great week at the National League of Cities, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to do that. And I won't tell us the the inside joke.
Yeah, I wouldn't be that ham-handed either.
Go ahead and ham it up, okay?
Mr. Lutke?
Mayor Gilmore, earlier I mentioned what a tremendous resource the American Planning Association is, not only for professional planners, but for elected and appointed officials. We budget funds each year to provide APA memberships for both P&Z and the City Council. We have updated the membership list, and each one of you should be receiving emails on your city email address from the American Planning Association. If you are not getting those emails, please let me know, and we'll get that rectified as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No report, Mayor.
No report. Anything? We're going to keep on moving.
My turn.
I'm sorry, there's just one item on the agenda.
If you're ready.
Under reports, the quarterly investment report that's required by the Public Funds Investment Act is for informational purposes only. Other than I have no report.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm filling in tonight. So the lake's at 518.14, and compared to conservation pool at 522, that puts us about 3.86 feet low, which isn't bad considering the drought. So we need some rain.
We do that.
I was going to make mention that one of Lewisville's newest nonprofits are now online, servelouisville.org. So I would encourage residents, city council, mayor to check things out and to see what's new and what's going on. There's also links to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm excited to see how things are going to progress, and they were issued an interior finish out and demo permit last week. So sounds like things are off and running.
Off and running, absolutely.
Awesome.
Councilmember Kelly.
So real quick, first off, when we had the Fall Festival out of Castle Hills, I was very excited to see lots of folks out there from Lewisville. So to that end, we have Holiday in the Plaza on Saturday, November 26th. There may be some confusion about the times. I've seen 2 times posted. I've seen 10 to 1 and 4 to 7. I can tell you with almost absolute certainty, every time I've been, it's been 4 to 7 because there's a Christmas tree lighting, photos of Santa Claus, reindeer. It's a lot of fun. So please join me out there on the 26th of November. That's this coming Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m.
Councilmember Green.
My announcement had something to do with this Saturday as well, which I believe is a small business Saturday. I believe that's right. Is that what they call it? Or is there another fancy name? So, yeah, whenever you're done having your turkey and, maybe a little bit of Black Friday deals, don't forget to patronize your small businesses, and not just Old Town. We have small businesses throughout the city that could really use your support. So go see them on Saturday.
Councilmember Jones.
All right, a couple things. I want to thank this council. I want to thank TML for the endorsement for running for the NLC board. I didn't win, but that's okay. It was a fun experience to try to get us access. But thank you for the approval and the help that you guys gave me. We had a great time at NLC. One of the things that we found at the last meeting is that NLC will be working with the APA to work on workforce housing this next year. So that'll be another source where we can get some help on affordable housing. So I had a great time. I want to thank you guys again. And finally, and most importantly, even though we were out of town, we were in Kansas, we were still watching our Lewisville Fighting Farmers with a 10-0 victory. They've moved on this week. They'll be playing down in Arlington, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on, I had it up.
They're playing Keller.
They're
playing
Keller.
Choctaw.
It's Arlington Choctaw Stadium.
Yes.
At 11 a.m. on Saturday. So if you can get out there and go support them, we'll get us one step closer to that state championship. That's all I have.
That's right. Go Farmers. I would like to say I'm very honored to have attended in NLC with our colleagues up here and our city manager, God bless her, and Shantae. We all behaved, and I would just a point of observation. We got to visit with several councils from all over the United States, and I'm so appreciative of what we have at the city of Lewisville, and I thank y'all so much for lending yourself to this atmosphere of functionality. We are very much a functioning family compared to several that we got to visit with, and I am so thankful I don't live there and I live here. So it was a great experience, and we all got to know each other just a little bit better, and congratulations to Brandon on his MBA. You want to say something about that?
Sure, I guess. I was accepted into SMU's Cox School of Business on Friday.
Yep, that's huge.
Thank you.
So, thank y'all to all of you and everyone that you manage beneath you, because without you and your hard work, I mean, you make our job so much easier. And as our city manager can attest to, we have it great in the city of Lewisville. We have it fantastic.
City manager? All right. Do want to call up a couple of things on the calendar. Please don't forget First Fridays in Old Town Lewisville on Friday, December 2nd, as well as on Saturday, December 3rd. We have our tree lighting. We have our Huffines Auto Dealerships holiday parade, holiday stroll. Come on out to Johnson Feed for Santa and pancakes and sausages for breakfast. It is a full day event. So you can find out more on the City of Lewisville webpage. Just look up the Christmas parade or the holiday stroll. With that, we are going to go back into workshop session to discuss the residential pollinator program. Everyone who is here in the audience is more than welcome to join us back there. We're moving into workshop.
A little bit.
There it goes. It's there.
All right, we're good. Fair.
There we go.
We're green.
Let's put it out here.
Let's go. Oh, come on. You guys need to sign it.
That's enough.
Should we tell Jackson and I already have something.
That bread pudding has just been downhill from there.
Sweet. You just a little too low down.
I think we've got everybody ready to go. No, we lost Patrick. We're going to lose Patrick. Yeah, probably.
What was that? Like,
that was
where did that come from?
How long ago did you say that? It literally just came on.
I'm your friend, Larry. I think we'll go ahead and get moving. I don't see.
Okay, well, thank you for letting us squeeze in here at the last. I promise it will be short and sweet and exciting. For those of you that are not as familiar with us, we're going to be tag teaming it this evening. My name is Mindy White. I'm our sustainability manager.
I'm Chris Chastain, and I'm the Preserving Greenbelt manager. So the first thing we want to talk about is why even spend time with this program? Why is it important? So it addresses a couple of initiatives that we have as a city and as a department, as a staff. And the first of those, of course, is always going to Lewisville 2025 and addressing some of our big moves. So Extending the Green, a residential pollinator program, is going to help educate people, let them see it firsthand, up close and personal, understand the benefits of some of these things that we're trying to do. With that, seeing it, at your neighbor's house, in your neighborhoods, it's addressing some of those things we want to see with our diverse and thriving neighborhoods, giving something that people can be proud of and become a reason why people want to live in Lewisville. And of course, sustainability. It's these pollinator plants and native, grasses and wildflowers are going to help us be more sustainable as a city. And it goes to say, too, that it also addresses some of the goals within the Sustainability Action Plan. Some other initiatives that we're targeting with this is our Mayor's Monarch Pledge. A program like this, again, is a strong educational piece for residents of Lewisville. It shows that we have a commitment as a city to these efforts, to these initiatives, and the development of this program actually was an action item for us in the 2022 year, and so implementing that program and growing on it will be an action item for 2023 as well. And then finally, we want to point out our nice logo that you may have seen on the front slide. It's going to be here up in the corner throughout the presentation. And I bring up the Garden Ridge median conversion because that's something else that we hope to see is retooling this image that it looks wonderful and was made by city staff, and having a common thread through all these different initiatives you have, establishing pollinator gardens, doing these median conversions, launching this program, and using the same kind of branding to show that all these items are connected and residents can see that common thread through all the things that we're taking on as a staff. Moving on to more physical things is addressing drought. So Texas is currently in a drought, facing one of the worst droughts we've seen since 2011. And with changing climate, we see that droughts are becoming more frequent and severe. So establishing native plants and pollinators is going to make us more drought resistant as a whole, and that's positive for everybody. And then just gathering external data from this program. Research shows that there's lots of benefits with pollinators to wildlife, air quality, and we'll discuss some of those things further on in the presentation. But this is going to give us a great opportunity to collect some of that data and really show what we're doing with it. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, there's a study that was actually just released about a week or two ago that was through National Geographic that talked about how the benefit of having these little micro habitats that these type of pollinator gardens represent has ripple effects with wildlife. You have your actual pollinators that are visiting it, that are using the plants for food, then you have your wildlife and your birds that are supported by that secondary population as well. So you're seeing native bird populations benefiting from wildlife gardens and native plantings in the city as well. So there's several different layers of positive effects that you see from a program like this. Oh, did I see, James? It's not that easy.
So coming off why it's important, we want to address some of those goals and, like I said, dig into details about some of the things we're hoping to see. So up front, we want to reduce water usage as a city. These native plants require less water as they're built for the climate. They become more drought resistant, as we mentioned, as we deal with more drought events. And they reduce water runoff, which is good for the environment as well. They're going to reduce the amount of maintenance that's required by residents within their landscapes and yards, which is going to create reduced emissions with less mowing. Same thing on that same note is reduced fuel usage. And then because they're native to this area, they don't require the same amount of pesticides and herbicides. So you just have less of that. You're introducing less of those into the environment as well. And same thing with fertilizers. Along those same things of reducing water and maintenance, just by reducing the amount of non-native turf grasses that we have in people's yards, you're going to see those things in hand. We're trying to improve pollinator habitats. The reason for that is it increased biodiversity, meaning that if you have a variety of plants, if one of them is having an issue one year, and if you have a monoculture, everything goes out at once. If you have a good diversity, you're never losing your entire stock at once. And it will decrease soil loss as well, which goes into the erosion. Same thing with the water runoff. It enhanced the ecosystem, which, as Mindy mentioned, what we're hoping to see is increased pollinators, of course, your butterflies, your bees. That's going to bring a larger bird population. Those birds are going to eat the mosquitoes and things that we don't want to see. So it just has a common thread that ties through and creates benefits for our community. Another goal with this program is having a strong communication with code enforcement for certified yards. We want to make sure that it's a seamless way for code to know who is certified and that they know what they're looking for when they see those things. It'll be clearly designated, as we'll talk about later in the presentation. And then going back to the diverse and thriving neighborhoods is that they just look really pretty. And so community beautification, again, we hope that as you drive through streets in Lewisville, you see these gardens pop up, and it's something that people are proud of and that catches attention and starts discussion.
So we've been working with a team over the past few months to develop this program, and it truly is a collaborative effort. And these stakeholders are listed here, not only who's helped develop the program, but who will be implementing it once it's live. It's City of Lewisville staff, it's the Parks Department and Sustainability team. We would be providing these program guidance and administrative support, so fielding the applications, fielding the questions, making sure that things are meeting guidelines. We would host that application and those guidelines on our city website for residents to access. And then there's a demonstration garden that the Master Naturalists and Master Gardeners have had conversations about with Chris near Thrive, where residents could go by and see an example of what some of these plants would look like that we're talking about for the program, so they can kind of get a real life example through the different seasons of what to expect. The center partners here are a really critical piece of the volunteer support that would make this program successful. We have the Native Plant Society of Texas, Master Gardeners, and Master Naturalists that are all partnering together. The main thing that they're doing, they're creating a 4-hour workshop for program participants, which we require. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth in a moment, but that's a requirement to make sure that everybody has that baseline of knowledge of how to best prepare their site, how to take care of the plants, what to look out for if there's any issues, and just really gives that baseline so that everybody's coming into it well educated and well informed. They're also providing that technical expertise and volunteer support. They're the ones that will actually be looking at the pictures that are submitted, potentially going out on a site visit or doing some sort of a FaceTime inspection of the garden out at the site. So they are a really critical piece in making sure that with their knowledge, what's being submitted fits the criteria that we're asking the residents to meet for the garden. And then they're also, again, planning and managing that demonstration garden potentially near Thrive. And then Keep Lewisville Beautiful is another partner on this. They've just kicked off their native seed library. There's 2 locations, one at the KLB office and one at our actual library. And those have been incredibly popular so far, so I see that as being a good complement to this program. And they also have a wealth of information in terms of native plants that they would be able to provide. And this just shows a quick flow chart of how this program might work. So our resident signs up for the educational workshop, they attend, they get all this knowledge, they think, hey, this sounds like a great idea for me. They submit their application, which includes a detailed plant list and photos that allow that volunteer to see what's been established, make sure that there's a border. We don't want it to look just willy-nilly. We don't want folks to say my unmowed lawn is my pollinator area. We want to show some intentionality there, that this is a deliberate garden space that has the plants that we're looking for. That application will be evaluated for completeness to make sure it has everything it needs by city staff, namely myself. Then I will pass that along to our volunteers, which they will inspect the garden. They'll look at a checklist that we've collaboratively put together. And then if the garden meets all the criteria, city staff approves the designation, we add it to a database that we can access internally and also use for mapping purposes, and residents receive a rig for wing sign. So this is an example of the kind of sign that a participating certified garden would be able to display in their front yard. And it has the logo that Community Relations put together for us, and it shows that they are a certified garden. So that's the process that we are looking at overall. So the application requirements, the complete application form, again, that's going to have all their contact information, their address. It will say where around the house the garden is located. Is it on the side? Is it in the front? Is it both? It helps give the full information that our volunteers will need to make that assessment. They have to provide proof of that workshop that we talked about a moment ago, and we are offering a waiver option because we may have some folks that already have that wealth of knowledge that are members of one of these 3 main organizations. So if they can show that they are an active current member in either the Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, or NIPSOT, then they get a pass from the workshop. They will still be provided that additional information so they know what we're looking for from the application process, but they won't have the 4-hour workshop as part of their criteria. And then again, the clear pictures that show all the things that we're needing to see. Being able to tell what kind of plants there are, being able to tell the orientation with the street or the house, making sure that there's a border or a perimeter, and then that plant list that goes along with the pictures. And one of the things that's really important to note is that the application process and the guidelines emphasize protecting the visibility and right-of-way access. So if the person's on a corner, we want to make sure it's not encroaching onto the street, onto the sidewalk. If somebody is going down the sidewalk, the plants shouldn't be out in the sidewalk. It's just making sure that it's pleasant for everyone that's driving or visiting. And then we're also asking them to consider utilities and easements as they're planting and preparing their garden. Oops.
So just a little bit more details on what the workshop will entail. It's going to be designed so that even somebody who doesn't have any experience in this field but is interested is going to feel confident coming out that they can participate. So you'll be walked through how to prepare a bed if you're starting from scratch, or if you already have some sort of existing, they'll give you some tips on how you can make it fit to the program. They'll cover the plant selection. So we worked with our partners at NIPSOT to create a list of plants specific for this program. Within the list, it shows you where, if it's native to Texas, and they even drill down as far as which plants are native to Denton County. And it also has lists of vendors who can sell plants. So this one you can maybe find at a big box store like Home Depot or Lowe's, or this one might be at a local nursery. They give you all the information within the list, and so that will be covered throughout the class. And that curated list is definitely like the ones that we celebrate and want to see the most, but the full list would be anything native to Texas, which is available from the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. And then also the care for your garden, so kind of what to expect in the winter, in the spring, and the summer, so you feel confident that your garden's doing what you need it to do, even as plants go dormant. What kind of watering is going to be required and your different options for that, what's going to be available to you. And then along with all those is troubleshooting. Whenever you do have an issue, how do you address it? When you see this, what does that mean? And giving people those things. And then city staff will come in, likely Mendy or myself, and do a small section on the program guidelines, just the administrative parts so that people understand what the application process looks like. We highlight some of those key things dealing with code enforcement just to make sure that people have a full understanding before starting. And so then next, just to give some brief examples of things that we're looking for. So here's some plants we've identified as things that you can plant. So butterfly milkweed, some black-eyed Susan, American beauty berries. These will all be perfect plants for this program. And then similarly, plants that we don't want to see are some of our invasives. Some Chinese privet, Johnson grass, heavenly bamboo. Without going too far into the guidelines, we do allow some wiggle room as far as what's native and non-native. So a garden only needs 75% native. So if someone has something that's not native, it's not going to automatically disqualify you from the program. But there is a short list of about 8 or 9 plants that, and these are on there, that are non-negotiable. So if that's within your garden, that would be a non-starter.
And these plants are largely plants that Parks is already dealing with as invasives and trying to manage and get rid of in our community. So we certainly don't want to endorse a program or a certification where they have the problem plants as part of their garden. So the certification process, the way this will work, the inspection process, again, it's received by Lewisville staff, and we're going to refer it out to our Master Naturalist, Master Gardener volunteers. They have a project manager on their end who is going to manage folks that are interested in getting hours for participating in this program. They have 30 days from the point that they receive that inspection to either virtually or in person complete their inspection of the garden. The reason that we went with 30 days with them is because in case we get like a slug of volunteers that are wanting to, or a slug of applicants after a workshop that want to participate, we want to give these volunteers adequate time to have the turnaround to give the assessment that the application needs. And again, once they pass, they receive the aluminum yard sign to display. And then there's a recertification process where every 3 years we want to take a glance at what's going on out there and make sure that it still meets the criteria. If there's been like a big freeze and lots of plants have died or that hasn't been kept up, we want to make sure we're taking a glance periodically just to make sure that the garden is still what we would expect to see. And then the bottom bullet, troubleshooting and data collection, we envision an annual survey of participants. This would be not only on their experience with the program, but also some qualitative data about what they're seeing in their gardens. Are you seeing more butterflies? Are you seeing more birds? Have you noticed more activity there? Because I think it would be really helpful to have that type of information in real time from our residents. And then we also see some opportunities for mapping. And I have an example up here of what that might look like. This is a map that McKinney put together from a prior, if you may recall, You Planted, the Rooted In Garden boxes that are pre-planted that we've participated with in the past with our residents. This is just a smattering from before COVID of where the boxes that were picked up in our Lewisville location, actually where the residents lived. And so we could do something similar to this with people that are certified with the actual program and see what the distribution is. And this is interesting because it almost works like little beads on a chain for these pollinators. They're able to hop from garden to garden to garden. If we have an idea of who's participating, it gives us an idea of the habitat network that we're seeing in our community. So next steps, we're looking for feedback from y'all tonight and get thoughts and feedback based on what we presented. We'd like to roll it out, the marketing at Holiday Stroll, with the idea that we'd have registration opening for that workshop in early 2023 with a workshop date scheduled with the Master Naturalists and Master Gardeners in February. And then our first pilot group, we're limiting that to a maximum of 40, and we're ideally having that group certified in spring and summer of 2023. We're also looking at updating our mowing ordinance to be able to account for this program in early 2023 as well, so you'll see more details coming soon on that.
Council?
I like it. I'm curious, it certifies every 3 years. What happens if someone doesn't meet certification? Take the sign back, and what happens?
Yeah, so part of that certification form is, issues addressed. And we've worked out how volunteers with master naturalists and gardeners, they'll work with you. It wouldn't be like an overnight thing, like, oh, you don't meet it, take us your time. We'll work with you and give you time to, come back in compliance.
Thank you.
I just had a thought about, I think a couple of slides back, you were talking about the data collection. It would be, so for somebody like me who feels very intimidated, I love the idea of doing it, but I feel very intimidated about trying to do something like this myself. And I know that, like, you go to a workshop, and then you go and you do it, but then you're going to start having issues that come up. And everybody is going to end up having, a lot of the same issues. If there were a way to connect people to be able to share, hey, tips and tricks, I did this and this is what happened, or just to kind of, I don't know if the city could facilitate that kind of communication with people who are participating so that they can share information among themselves on how they can, lessons learned and how they can, do better. That would be really helpful, and also help somebody like me who thinks, I would love to do it, but I'm just not so sure I can do it. That's support and encouragement from your neighbors.
I'm wondering if KLB or Master Naturalists might be able to more effectively do that than the city.
I do know that they have a helpline through the Master Naturalists and Master Gardeners where they do field questions at certain points during the month, but there's also some really great resources on Facebook that are not affiliated with the city, but they are people that do that type of gardening that are very welcoming and open to questions for new gardeners. The other thought that we've talked about as a future opportunity is partnering with nurseries and with Rooted In particular, which is a nonprofit that creates these little garden boxes that they can grow based on our plant list. And they also come with landscape plans, so it's hard to mess up. So it comes with a plan that if you want a square bed, if you want along your side, if you want around, it gives you opportunities to kind of look at what they've given you and arrange it for the space that you have, and it's really easy for a novice to pick up. So that's an opportunity in the future that we see a partnership potentially developing once we kind of get the wheels going on it.
Yeah, I'll add to, that's really valuable feedback, and we can look at implementing something like that. One other piece we did discuss in our volunteer capacity with Master Naturalists is finding time like once a month so that they're not overwhelmed, where people can reserve like a 30-minute time slot for like a Zoom call. And so if you are having those issues, you can sign up for 10 a.m. on this Saturday and then have a Zoom call with one of our Master Naturalists and show them, this is what I'm seeing, what's going on here, and they can kind of workshop that with you.
Other comments? I'm excited. It's really cool. It's been a long time coming, and I'm really, this is going to be...
I think we've been asking for this for 3 years.
Somewhere in there. I like that we're targeting, trying to find that group of 40. I think that's a great way to build a community. I really feel like those folks are going to want to talk to each other and share ideas. I'm on a few of these gardening groups already, just kind of see how it works in other states. But it really creates a real sense of community and ownership, and people are just excited. They got growing things. It's really neat. So thank you. I appreciate all the work, and look forward to seeing this at the Stroll.
I had one more thought about it, because I realize that the target audience is really for single-family homes. But I'm wondering, considering that this is something that will help reduce, the cost of irrigation, I wonder if this is something that
we can maybe get, multifamily complexes to kind of tap into, for just to kind of help address some of the concerns that we have related to the drought that we're seeing now and will likely see in the future. I don't know if we want to go all out and tackle all of that all at the same time. Maybe just, focus on the single family at first and then try to expand it out. But it seems like there would be at least a cost incentive for them to consider this.
I love that you brought that up as an idea, because that is something that we brainstormed about when we were getting started, about how could we incorporate some of these other areas. Maybe using some of the stormwater credits that commercial can get, could they include the native plants in their bioswales or something along those lines? So definitely that was something we kind of played with, about what are the other options. We really felt strongly that we wanted to get the kinks out with this smaller group and then look at how can we grow it and do bigger things after that.
I think that's a very good strategy.
All right, if there's no further comments, thank you all, and we'll go close out our regular session. As there is no further action to be taken on tonight's agenda, I've called this meeting adjourned. It is 8:13 p.m. That was a rodeo. That was a rodeo.
That was way more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I set the goal.